Curious people inspire me. That curiosity led me to be the opening president of the National Inventors Hall of Fame in Akron, Ohio. Every year, 20 or 30 of the inductees in the Hall of Fame come together in Akron, Ohio to celebrate the success of the next class of inventors and innovators. At that event were these marvelous dinners where you'd be sitting around listening to the most curious people I've ever met. You might be sitting across from the inventors of fiber optics, Steve Wozniak, the inventor of the personal computer, or the inventor of the electric guitar, Les Paul. One year, I overheard a conversation between Forrest Bird, the inventor of the respirator, and Stephanie Kowalik, who invented Kevlar, a material so strong it could stop a bullet, but extremely light. The conversation continued, where Forrest turned to Stephanie and said, "You know, Stephanie, we were able to, our team, design these backpacks made of Kevlar to put our baby birds, those young kids' respirators in them, so we could climb the Andes Mountains and navigate treacherous and winding trails and cliffs to get to the top to their villages where these children were suffering from respiratory challenges." You know, as I learned about these inductees and innovators, one thing they had in common was a deep sense of curiosity. They always looked in all directions. They looked across and worked across many different disciplines, and they went beyond the obvious. They went one step further than everybody else. It's fascinating. The other thing I learned, especially from Forrest, is that curiosity is emotional. When you could save the lives of young children, it's an emotional experience, and I see that over and over again with innovators. It's people like this who actually do change the world. Curiosity changes the world. This curiosity, the things that I learned, fueled my curiosity about curiosity. It led to my dissertation, where I studied and I interviewed many of these interviewers to understand where their curiosity started, what inspired them, and how they got to where they were today. It's fascinating. And today, well, actually, curiosity fuels creativity. Creativity is about good ideas. Innovation is about good ideas that people care about. And entrepreneurship is about good ideas that people care about, that someone's willing to pay for. This is the journey we take students here at Babson, from that curiosity to creativity to innovation and ultimately to entrepreneurship. Solving problems that are worth solving. Today I'm going to talk about how to fuel your own creativity and curiosity, personal or professional. I'm going to give you some tips, some topics to thinking about. I'm going to teach you how to see the world through other eyes, look at different perspectives beyond your own. Go one step further, look beyond yourself. There are 3 things to be thinking about. One is find and experience interesting people. Go to surprising places and seek out memorable experiences. We're going to start with people. Brian Grazer, in the book The Curious Mind, realized that as a young child he had a superpower of curiosity. And his first job out of college, he was hired by Warner Brothers to deliver contracts to celebrities and to producers. He worked with Ron Howard. That's how you may know him. He brought these contracts to the homes and the offices of these individuals. And when he got there, they said, "Oh, no, you can't deliver it, we need to." And he said, "No, I'm pushing. I'm going forward because I have to. They told me I actually have to deliver to these individuals." So this turned into a series of curiosity conversations that he had over the years, starting with these celebrities, where he tried to understand who they were, what made them tick, and what inspired them. It was fascinating to hear his stories about these celebrities, about these producers, Nobel laureates, and many different people that he interviewed throughout his life. It's a fascinating journey that he did month after month after month. Who might you interview? Who are you curious about? Maybe someone famous, maybe it's a plumber who comes to your house. Maybe it's someone else. Who might you start these curious conversations with and be awed and inspired by them? You know, I was at a Medal of Technology Award dinner in Washington one year, And I'm sitting next to this guy, and we're having conversations about his house and his family and things that he did. And I turned to him and said, "So what did you invent?" And he smiled at me and said, "I invented barcode." Like, really? Where did that start? How were you inspired? He said, "Well, it actually started when I was in college. And I was an intern in the president's office, and I overheard a conversation between the president and the owner of a chain of grocery stores. And the head of the chain of grocery stores turned to the president and said, 'You know something? I'm struggling doing inventory. I need some help from either students or faculty.' And the president turned to him and said, 'We're an educational institution. We don't do consulting.' And so this inventor turned to me and said, 'I listened to that, and I put it in the back of my head.' And the following week," he said to me, "he went to Florida for spring break. And he's sitting there like any other science major, and he noticed the waves crashing up against the shore. He noticed the rain and the wind, as it happens in Florida all the time. And he's sitting on the beach, and he puts his hands in the sand, and he started noticing the shades and the shadows created by the sun on these lines in the sand. And for whatever reason, that inspired him to think, wow, that inventory system, if we actually did that and printed them on pieces of paper, we might be able to create codes and bars that could be used as inventory tools for this grocer." He turned to me and he said, "Guess that's where it started. That's what turned into barcodes, which is actually on every product we buy today." Let's go from people to places. Surprising places. I love travel. Travel fuels my curiosity. And last year, my wife and I got a chance to finish our 50 states. The last state was Alabama, where we went on the Civil Rights Tour. In every state that we went to different quirky museums, as we called it. We looked them up online, quirky museums. We went to the Wizard of Oz Museum. We went to the Evel Knievel Museum. We went to the Idaho Museum of Potatoes. We even went to the Museum of Clean, which was, okay, Museum of Clean, what could it be? But as you enter the museum, you look on the wall on the right, and there were 100 brooms from 100 different countries, different shapes, different sizes, different colors, used for different purposes. And that piqued my curiosity, because I work with students all over the world, and do I ever ask them, how do you clean in your country? I should be asking them things like, how do you eat? How do you travel? How do you elect your leaders? To me, that is what it's about. I need to be more curious, and that's going to lead me to asking more questions of my students. Our travels took us to Portugal again last year. We were in Porto. It was fascinating. We were standing by this building, and around this building were lines and lines and lines of people. It was a bookstore, and our tour guide said, "Yeah, we're going in there. I've got tickets for you." And I'm like, first of all, I don't want to pay to go in a bookstore, and secondly, I'm not waiting on a big line. So she said, "Oh no, you're going to appreciate it." So we walked in and actually got there. You open up the front door, and these huge mahogany doors open up. In the splendor of this bookstore, everywhere you looked, there were books up and down, to the right, to the left. And in the middle of the room, there was this winding staircase that brought you up to the top. And as you looked around, there were books oozing out of every corner, every shelf of books. There were biographies, there were non-fictions, there were fiction. There were all kinds of books of shapes and sizes and colors. A gentleman next to me, getting next to me, turns to me and says, "You know, this bookstore inspired the library at Harry Potter." I was like, really? Now, I watched the Harry Potter movies, and I read the book, and I don't remember much about the library at Hogwarts. And I wanted to learn more and remember, and going back and being in that experience. So when I went home, I decided, since I commute 2 hours a day to Babson each way, I was going to listen to every Harry Potter book. I'm on 5. And what it did to me, it sparked my curiosity about everything. It's one of the most curious and creative books I've ever read. And as I'm reading them and listening to them, it takes me to the characters to meet new people, go to new places and surprising places, and to go to memorable experiences that they all had. And this inspires me as I travel day to day throughout my life. Now let's go to memorable experiences. Disney is the ultimate in creativity and curiosity. You stand in there as you enter, and there's all these things flying around. There's people, there's characters, there's transportation, there's buildings, all sorts of things that inspire you. It's a big place that I love to go. Disney wants to go one step further. They want to make it exciting and inspiring, but they want to make it accessible to everyone. People who cannot hear. A gentleman here is helping us with that. People who cannot see. So what Disney did is they created all these tools for those folks. And so I got hired at one point as a consultant to look and understand how people who can't see or hear experience Disney. And so we spent the first half of our first day with earplugs in our ears to experience it if we couldn't hear. What was that like? What was amazing about it, because I couldn't hear, I looked in different ways. I looked at all corners, knowing full well that the stimulus of hearing was not possible for me at that point. I looked at captions, but I also looked at everything around. The second half of that first day, we put on blindfolds. We were escorted around with headphones. Those headphones were explaining what's around. Now, I just never experienced Disney like that. People who could not see, I was able to imagine what Disney might be because of who was talking to me and the things were telling me those things that are around me. I'm fascinated by that, and this is a way that I got to experience Disney in new ways, even though I had been there many, many times. Disney wanted to go one step further. If you ask people who are blind how you experience fireworks, the first thing they say is the oohs. They hear the oohs and the ahs of the people next to them. There's the crackling and the whirling and the swirling of fireworks above them. And Disney wanted to do a little bit more, or a lot more. And what they did is they invented these rubber membranes where people who are blind could put their hands on it and actually feel the fireworks. They could feel the crackling of the fireworks. They could feel the whistling, but they'd not just imagine it, they could feel it. Imagine if you were there and not being able to see it, but to feel it. They were able to feel these cascading waterfalls of fireworks, of light and embers, going from up high above down to your feet. It was a fascinating way to experience fireworks at Disney, to spark your imagination and your creativity. One thing I'm going to charge you all with is do something new every month. Maybe you should take dance lessons, build a house for Habitat Humanity, or maybe even play a game of pickleball. You know, I was on a plane. I got bumped to first class when I was young. I was sitting next to a CEO, and I said, "So, how do you learn about the world?" She's telling me all about being a CEO. I said, "How do you learn about it?" He goes, "I read a different magazine every month. I might read a cooking magazine one month, or a travel magazine, or even a kids magazine." That opened his eyes to not see the world through his eyes, but through someone else's eyes. And that's something I love to do, read different magazines. It's a very fascinating way to think about the world through other perspectives. I want you to look around this room now. Imagine if you were a detective. How might you experience this room? Or maybe you might be a trapeze artist, or maybe a kindergarten child. How might you experience this room differently than if it was through your own eyes? You know, I always wanted to be a conductor. Of course, my baton fell. I always wanted to be a conductor. And this all started when I was 8 years old. I was inspired by Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny would conduct orchestras and operas in his cartoons, and that's just sort of like, I was totally inspired. How can you conduct an orchestra and create 100 people, an environment where 100 people could sound like a unified group of people doing something together? Different instruments made of different materials. So what I would do as an 8-year-old child, I would turn off the lights. I would turn on the New York Philharmonic led by Leonard Bernstein, and I would start conducting the orchestra. I would conduct the timpani, and I would conduct the tubas, and I would conduct the violins and the violas, and then I would conduct the piccolos. It was fascinating to me. It surrounded me with all kinds of sounds, and it taught me what it would take to create that environment, bringing all those people together to create the experience of being a conductor. Well, actually, what I'd like to do is, remember a few minutes ago I talked about having a new experience every month? We're going to do that for you all today, and we're going to need your help. I want you to put your phones down, put your brochures down, and I want you to sit there, get everything off your lap. I'm going to give you some direction. When I pass by you, do what I do. And don't stop until I come back and have you do something else at the end. You're going to keep on doing it. We do a bunch of things. And remember that cascading waterfall that we created and we learned about at Disney for people who cannot see. Imagine yourself. We're going to take you to another place. And we're going to sail through the storm, and we're going to create our own thunderstorm. So do what I tell you to do, and let's hear and pay attention to what's going on. Great job. Thank you. Fuel your curiosity. Find interesting people, explore surprising places. Seek memorable experiences. Be curious. Thank you.